So welcome to week 2 of PSHS 6240 here at Georgetown University. Just announcements. Again, please keep up the effort. Please keep up the effort. I know everyone is enthused the first week. Many of you are back in school, and sometimes the effort declines. Please don't do that. Please keep that up. So the second thing is group presentations. I broke you into groups. Let me take a second here and show you where. So if you go to the Blackboard, you go to course management, you go to users and groups, you'll see groups, and you'll see your group project there. So you're under Blackboard, and you go to users and groups, and that's probably the best way to look at this. So just keep that in mind. Start collaborating with a group. You know the dates that you guys are going to be working together or briefing, and be prepared. If someone can't show up, that's fine, but just cross-load one, make sure someone can brief who's going to be there, but second thing is make sure you cross-load the work however you see fit. So if they're not briefing, they do more back-end work. Everyone gets the same grade, so it's definitely a group effort. So we talked about terrorism as an existential threat. And you saw in the Atlantic article the data about terrorism being an existential threat, and it's, do we spend too much money on it? And I'm going to actually kind of disagree a little bit with the article. And I think many of you brought this up in your discussion points, but I want to talk about some of the key points. So terrorism has a greater psychological impact. I bring this example up constantly in my class. If I live here in D.C., and if someone was killed in a car accident on Monday on the Beltway, would you stop driving on Tuesday? Probably not. If someone was killed Monday and Tuesday, would you stop driving on Wednesday? Probably not. If someone was killed Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, would people stop driving on Thursday? Probably not. I think we've been inured to car accidents, especially here in the DC area. Let me bring up this other example. If there was a school bus bombing on Monday, would you be putting your kids on a school bus on Tuesday? Yes, no. Probably most people would still do it. There was a school bus bombing on a Monday and a Tuesday. Would you put your kids on a school bus on Wednesday? Probably not too many people would do that. If there's a school bus bombing on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, no one would put their kids on a school bus on a Thursday. And that is the nature of terrorism. It has a far larger psychological impact than car accidents or medical issues or heart disease or any of those other policy issues that we talked to in detail. You can make the argument that it's self-inflicted, that we do it to ourselves, that, if you cancel school because of that school busing, if you cancel school on Thursday because of bus bombings on Monday and Tuesday, it's because we're doing it to ourselves. And you can make that argument. That's not a bad argument. Let's say there was a school bus bombing on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. You could probably send your kids to school on Thursday, and 99.99999% chance you'll be fine. But because we self-inflict and because we would cancel school probably, the terrorists can have a larger impact. And we also have to ask again, what can impact our way of life? I hate to say this, but car accidents don't impact our way of life. I mean, we might have better safety features and seatbelts and those types of issues, but we're not going to stop driving because 30,000, 40,000 people die every year in car accidents. But certainly terrorism can impact our way of life. Political violence can impact our way of life. It can impact your desire to go about your day-to-day operations and your day-to-day going to school and going to work. And then we have to ask, finally, what is in our control? And this is probably why terrorism has the largest impact. I can control for car accidents. I can drive slower, drive sober, have a seatbelt, get those little dings and doohickeys that they have on sensors that can prevent cars from colliding. I can control for that. I can control for heart disease by exercising and eating better. Terrorism, I can't presumably control for because of its randomness. Because I could be walking down the street and be killed by a terrorist and do everything right. So I think that's why we put terrorism in a separate category than some of those other circumstances that you saw before. So what I'll just say is that this isn't going to be part of the final, but this question, is terrorism an existential threat? Do we spend too much money, effort? How do we look at it in the United States versus other countries? That's going to come up over and over again. So I want to make sure everyone is thinking through that, even though we're not going to be tested on this or have a paper on this in the future. So moving on to week 2, terrorism history, my favorite. We're going to be looking, I'll talk about the readings in a second, but we're going to look about terrorism going back from the post-World War II era to right now. And the thing to consider is, when we're looking at history, is how terrorist groups use the messaging of the day. How do they use the media technology to get their message out? And that's what separates a successful terrorist group from another one. And as you go through the history, start thinking through that. And I have a couple examples that you're going to read about. The first is the Irgun, which is the Israeli terrorism, or the group that essentially founded Israel. They took advantage of wire teletype photography to get their message out. They hung 2 British soldiers here. This is a picture of this. So not only did they engage in that brutality, but they also wanted to get the message out quick. And they knew that this would show up on the front page of every newspaper the next day. Prior to World War II, photographs had to be taken and then they had to be shipped over, and you'd see a message 2 weeks later. Here, if you get the photograph out immediately, that's going to have a bigger impact. And that was the technology of the day. That was essentially the YouTube of the day, that you went viral through this teletype photography. Many of you may not remember this, but read about it. This is Black September. You're going to watch a documentary on it this week. As you're watching it, think about how they got their message across. They had used this tape. This is a Palestinian group, and they purposely targeted Olympics because it was the first 24-hour color TV event. Those of you who don't know, this was in the Munich Olympics in 1972, where they took several Israeli hostages. And they did that on purpose to get their message out to a worldwide audience. And it was, at the time, riveting TV. And then finally, I think many of you might remember this. This is the ISIS beheading back in 2014. You may look at it as an act of brutality, and it was, but it also got enormous publicity, enormous clicks, enormous message for that organization. So how groups use the message and use the communications of the day really leads to their success. So think about that going through this week. And then finally, the readings. I have to apologize. There's actually an error in this. You'll read the Hoffman chapter 1 and 4 and the 4 waves of terrorism. I couldn't find the CNN the 70s. It was on HBO Max, and it was pulled off of HBO Max, and so go ahead. I'm going to substitute One Day in September for that, and I'll send the link out this week. And then the Vox article that's there that talks about defining terrorism. So the lecture is Terrorism History, Part 1. You'll see that. And then my favorite, what is terrorism? What isn't terrorism? That is a key point that you're going to be brought up in your paper that's due the following week. So read the Vox article, debate in the discussion points. What is terrorism? What isn't in the discussion board? Have a good debate. Take different sides of the debate. Analyze different people's arguments. The more you do that, the better prepared you'll be for the paper and the briefing the following week. So if there's questions or issues, let me know, and I look forward to reading this week's discussion.